Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling. And man, I really appreciate you guys checking the video out today and spending some time with me. And guys, today we're going to be talking about Rick Clunn's big announcement yesterday that he's stepping down from tour level competition on the Bassmaster Elite Series. This truly marks the end of an era. And I want to give you guys sort of a few thoughts on that because I've known Rick for a long time, and maybe share some insights that you guys may find interesting from a historical perspective here. So if you didn't see it, guys, this caught me by surprise yesterday. When Rick weighed in yesterday at the Bassmaster St. Lawrence Elite Series tournament, he said that was his final day of competition in the Elite Series. He was stepping away from the top level, tour level events after 50 years. You guys that may have followed him, you've seen he had his 50-year celebration. And I don't think that it can be overstated enough how big of an event this is when Rick made that announcement, because Rick Clunn was the last of the old breed as far as the greatest generation in bass fishing. You guys hear a lot of people talking about the World War II veterans. That generation was the greatest generation, which I agree with. In terms of bass fishing, Rick's departure from competitive fishing at the tour level marks the end of that era, because he was really the last one. He was the last guy out there that represented the time period when bass fishing was at its greatest, which was in the 70s and 80s. That was back when the sport was pure. It hadn't been invaded by technology. There was a lot of wonderment and enthusiasm. There was a lot of people had this anticipation and the excitement of the future that laid ahead. And for those of us that were around back then, that was truly the best time in bass fishing. And, Rick's Bassmaster Classic wins in 1976 and 77, solidified his position as truly one of the last breed there. So I want to give you guys a few thoughts on this, because I've had a chance to get to know Rick and become very close friends with him. And throughout, as we go through life, guys, everybody, we all have seasons in life, and we all have periods of our life where certain people come into our life, and sometimes those people come into your life for a short period of time. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's a lifetime. But as events unfolded, there was about a 5-year period in my life back in the late 1990s where Rick and I were very close friends. We spent a lot of time together. We vacationed together. We did sweat lodges together. We stayed at each other's homes. We roomed together in tournaments. And I got to know him on a level that few people know Rick Clunn at. And one of the things I can tell you about Rick, and which makes him so unique, is Rick was a mysterious individual in terms of there's a mystique about Rick Clunn that is real. Even if you get to know him very well, there's a mystique about him that's sort of unexplainable, and it's very refreshing to see, and it's very grounding to some extent. Now, if you guys don't know Rick very well, he's a very soft-spoken individual, but he's one of those individuals, when he does say something, there's always meaning behind what he says. I've never heard Rick just be involved in some mindless, frivolous conversation. It's always like there's a thought process, and before he speaks, he thinks about what he's going to say. And I think that's one of the things that people resonate about him, is the wisdom that has come as a result of that. And when you look back, there's been this whole debate of the greatest bass anglers of all time. Who is the greatest bass angler of all time? And I got thinking about it back and forth, and a lot of people, they vacillated between Bill Dance and Rick Clunn and Kevin Van Dam and those type of people. And at one point, up until just recently, I sort of felt that Kevin Van Dam was probably the greatest bass angler of all time. But after I reflected on this, especially yesterday after I heard Rick, announce his, not really retirement, because he says he still wants to fish like back home, some local events and stuff, but his, departure from the tour level fishing, I really feel that Rick Clunn is the greatest bass angler that we've ever had and will ever have in the sport of fishing. And the reason I say that is a couple different reasons. Not the fact that he's won, 2 U.S. Opens, the Red Mount All-American. He's won FLW Tour events, 4 classics, a ton of tournaments. Everybody knows his wins. But one of the things that in my opinion, that makes Rick the greatest bass angler in all time is if you hear his story about how he got started out and the sacrifices that were required, you know, and the pressures, and to be able to transcend that financial pressure and the stress that came with that at the time, that is a huge deal. Because a lot of people that, you know, have been successful, if they don't have to overcome obstacles, the success that they gain is, to me, is not quite as impressive as somebody that overcame those particular obstacles. But the real thing about Rick Clunn, guys, that stands out to me more than anything else, and why I think he's the greatest, is that goes back to that mysterious, mystical, almost spiritual approach to bass fishing on a very pure level. Now, there was a period, you know, in Rick's career, from my observation, and I had a chance to fish with Rick. We drew out 4 different tournaments and Bassmaster tournaments. So I've been in the boat with him, as well as spending a lot of time one-on-one personally with him. But one of the things that really stand out to me about Rick, that really, you know, drew me to him as a friend, was the fact that there was a period from about the mid-'80s up until, I'm going to say, the mid-'90s, where Rick was on this level of fishing that nobody can really appreciate, in terms of having this intimate, spiritual, mystical, magical connection with the fish and the environment around them. And if you guys have ever read much or have talked to him much, especially about his 1990 Bassmaster Classic win, you would understand that. And I've had a chance to have some very intimate conversations with Rick one-on-one over the years that most people would not be able to understand. It's on a level of philosophy that a lot of people simply can't grasp. And that, to me, is what the most powerful thing is about Rick Clunn. And one of the things that really made me sad was the fact that as technology became more prevalent, and as like GPS mapping technology became more advanced, and then as electronic technology become more advanced, that art form and that ability that Rick had to have that mystical, spiritual connection with the fish, it dissipated, in my opinion, because the technology took away from that magic. And that's one of the reasons, guys, I'm so anti-forward-facing sonar and anti-technology, is I understand how powerful that mystical, unknown, magical part of fishing is that Rick Clunn represented during the height of his career. And when you know everything, and instead of like being able to envision fish being a certain in a certain position, and you can go out and turn a live scope on and you can see the fish where they're at and see them hit your boat, that completely destroys that powerful, mystical, magical approach to fishing that most true fishing purists understand. They've always understood that. Fishing has always been a spiritual, mystical, magical experience to the people that understand what fishing really is. And at the height of Rick's career, back in the, 80s and early 90s, there was nobody out there that understood that. He was on a level completely his own. So, anyway, guys, it's sort of like, I don't want to say it's a sad day. It's inevitable for somebody to have 50 seasons on the Bassmaster circuit. That is unbelievable, because I did it for, 30 years. And I can tell you right now, from my perspective, doing it for 30 years, it's not just the fact that doing it for 30 or 50 years is that hard. It's the fact on what you miss out in life. Because the 30 years that I spent traveling all over the country fishing the tour level, I spent half of my life away from my friends and family. I spent half of the time in hotels and campgrounds, away from everybody that I loved. And looking back in retrospect, for me, I don't know if it was worth it. And for somebody to do that for 50 years, that's an accomplishment that most people can't even comprehend is so incredible there. But anyway, guys, we're never going to see anybody out there again like Rick. I mean, I can promise you that. He was one of a kind. He was sort of like the Babe Ruth. It's like nobody's ever going to see another Babe Ruth. Nobody's ever going to see another Rick Clunn. And like I said, if for those of us out there, there's been a few people out there, including myself, that has been able to spend time with Rick and understand the depth of a person that he is on that spiritual, mystical, magical level. A lot of people just can't really fully appreciate, him as a person from that perspective, like I've had the chance to do. So anyway, I think that it's probably going to be a lot more relaxing for him, spending more time around the house there and not having to worry about driving 1,000 miles across the country and pulling that boat on the interstate highways. There's a lot of stress involved with that. And anyway, I just wanted to share that a little bit with you guys. I thought you might enjoy it. So we'll talk later. See you.